at some point, this way that consciousness is always referring back to itself begins to break down, begins to fall away. And with it falls away all the internal spiritual experiences. What falls away is the experience of union. All of this sort of internal spiritual world, the view starts to fall away. Maybe occasionally it happens very, very quickly, but more often than not it happens bit by bit with moments of great transcendence, transcending self altogether. This is a domain that's very subtle in its own way. It's very complicated and very nuanced. But it's enough to say that there's a way in which, even when we get to quite a advanced state of realization, that even that realization, that advanced state of being itself starts to fall away. All of it starts to fall away. So when I'm talking about a surrendering of self, I'm talking about this from the most mundane, egoically oriented state of consciousness right up to, in many ways, the most rarefied types of spiritual consciousness. Because the surrendering self is a surrendering, in a certain sense, it's a letting go of consciousness itself. It's a letting go of all ways of referencing, self-referencing, in many ways referencing an inner life. This tendency of self to reflect back on itself, on its experiences, on even the beautiful things, it starts to slow down and dissolve. And that too is a surrendering of self. Now when self dissolves, only then do we really experience what there is beyond all notions of self, whether it's separate notions of self or expanded, unified experiences and notions of self, but what actually lies beyond self. And ultimately, this is where spirituality is taking everybody. Everybody. We can't really desire it. You can desire union, you can desire oneness, you can desire all higher self kind of spirituality. You can't really desire what's beyond self because there's nothing there. There's not a self there to desire it. There's really nothing there. So it can't be really sold. It can't be, you can't encourage somebody towards it. It's just it's sort of the ultimate outcome of the spiritual movement. So I just want to hint for the moment of that ultimate outcome. But as I say, I want to conclude here by simply reiterating once again of the atmosphere, the orientation that all of spirituality is really about. All the teachings are ways to help us to see through the various graspings by self, and to see through them, then they are let go of. Whether those teachings are about inquiry, whether they're meditation, whether it's about stillness, whatever it's about, they're all ways of moving beyond self, beyond ego. This is not to say that self or ego is bad or wrong or something that shouldn't be. It's just to say that this is the orientation of spiritual teaching. And it's something that's very, very important to remember, because the farther you go, the more that in the end it's just almost like a bear letting go, just with no technique, ultimately without an even teaching, without a pointer. So please remember the orientation, the atmosphere in which this teaching takes place, the surrendering of self, that's ultimately what it's all about. All the teachings orient you towards that.